Actually, yeah, I just shut that one down.
I'll second.
That's by Mr. Dickinson. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Beal,
Aye.
Mr. Dickinson,
Aye.
Ms. Pellerelli,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Bill, aye. Agenda approved. Counselor, could you please walk us through the procedures for electronic meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic emergency, the June 15, 2021 AlexRenew Enterprises Board of Directors meeting is being held electronically pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.23708.2A3, the Continuity of Government Ordinance adopted by the Alexandria City Council on June 20, 2020, and or Section 4G of House Bills 29 and 30 from the 2020 budget session to undertake essential business. The board of directors and the staff are participating from a combination of locations, remote and otherwise, through a video conference call on Zoom. And the meeting is being recorded. The recording will be posted on the AlexRenew website following the meeting. I would note that next month we will begin resuming our regular in-person board meetings. The City Council has encouraged all boards and commissions to go back to in-person meetings beginning on July 1st. So we will be resuming and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the electronic meeting procedures later in the agenda when we get to item 7B. But just so you are aware, we will need a quorum physically present at the AlexRenew office for the July board meeting. With that, Mr. Chairman, turn it back to you.
Thank you, Counselor, and I would encourage all board members and others to try to attend the meeting next month. You'll see a lot of changes here at AlexRenew. The staging area is coming together very quickly, and of course the site where the shaft will be is all cleared and looks like that's ready to go pretty soon. You'll be very impressed by the changes. Also changes in the boardroom. We now have panels separating panel members, and it will be different setup, but good to see everybody face to face. Let's jump right into public comment. Ms. Huff, do we have any members of the public?
No.
Jump item 5 on the agenda, consent calendar together. We'll look at the minutes from our May meeting plus the minutes from the public hearing we had together. Give you a moment to review the minutes of both of those meetings. Are there any questions for minutes, either our May meeting or the public hearing? Should I ask the board if they can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Adriana, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
It's a hybrid configuration. You're an AlexRenew and you're remote. Any comments or revisions to the minutes of those two meetings?
No.
Good.
You're barely audible, John.
Okay, let me speak louder. How's
That
that?
would help. Yeah,
That's better.
Okay, well, I will go full volume on my voice.
okay.
Might be a short meeting. I'll turn it out, but okay. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So move.
Is there-
Second,
we have a second?
yes.
And roll call vote. Mr. Beal, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Ms. Caldarelli?
Aye.
Mr. Dickinson?
Aye.
Mr. John?
Aye.
Mr. Hill says aye. Consent calendar approved. Unfinished business, the most important item on the agenda today. Review and approve rate adjustment for fiscal 22 and fiscal 23. Now, we've discussed this at previous meetings and we've had a hearing. I'm not sure we need any further discussion unless the board would wish so.
A question. Since the public hearing, have we received any comments or concerns?
No,
Questions?
no, nothing has been received since then.
Okay.
If there's no discussion from the board, do we have a motion to approve the rate adjustment for fiscal 22 and 23?
So move.
And I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Beal, second by Mr. Dickinson. Roll call vote. Mr. Beal,
Aye.
Ms. Caldarelli,
Aye.
Mr. Dickinson,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Hill says aye. Rate adjustment for 22-23 approved. Now, related to that, let's review the budget for fiscal 22, the operating and the capital budget. And again, we've a number of times and had a public hearing. Any discussion on the proposed budget, capital and operating?
I did have a question. In light of all the flooding down in Delray, might it be advisable to move ahead the item we have scheduled in the capital budget concerning the Commonwealth Interceptor, the repair work, move that ahead a bit? Would that alleviate the situation at all?
No, the Commonwealth Interceptor is a separate sanitary sewer. It has nothing to do with the stormwater flooding or any of that remediation work.
Okay.
Any further discussion on the budget for fiscal 22? Not, do I have a motion to approve the budget for fiscal 22 as presented?
So moved.
Really, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is that Bruce? Mr. Johnson? Okay, roll call. Mr. Beal?
Aye.
Ms. Caldarelli?
Aye.
Mr. Dickinson?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Hill says aye. Budget for 22 approved. Now we have two items of new business, being the AlexRenew owner advisor 5-year scope amendment number 7. Madam CEO, would you like to introduce this topic?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you can see from the memo, this is an ongoing contract that we have with Brown and Caldwell. We hired them 5 years ago when we started working with the city to start the conversation around the combined sewer system. Brown and Caldwell acts as our owner's advisor and program manager for the AlexRenew program. If you remember, when we went into this contract, we said that these contracts each year would ramp up to a peak as we got into the 21-22 timeframe. We're at that peak now. That's what you're seeing here. And over the course of the next few years, this contract will then fall off as we get through the design and actually move into the actual construction. So again, this provides the services that you've been used to, whether it's third party, easements and acquisitions, outreach, continuing with helping the contractor through the design phase and getting that all tidied up, getting permits as we move through with the city, and some construction management as well. So that is our ask for this year.
Are there any questions or issues to be raised by the board or others?
I have one question. Is there a term limit on this contract? Is it renewed year to year, or is it for a fixed period of time?
It renews year to year up until a certain end date, which escapes me right now, but yeah, it renews year to year.
Okay, thank you.
And Karen, I assume that Brown Caldwell bills for services rendered
Correct.
at certain rates that are established in the contract.
Correct.
And then at the end of this year, does the unspent money, if there is any, carry over?
No, because we don't pay them and then pay it back. So it doesn't carry over. If it's unspent, then we just move into the next year on the task order. I hope that
And
understands.
it starts over, the task order starts over again each year
Right. Then
from zero. Okay.
right. The amendment
Gotcha.
starts in there.
Okay, and in the past years that we've had them, this is the 5th year, so we've had 4 years. Do we have any record that could be provided post facto? In other words, I'll vote for this here, but as to what's actually been charged?
You want the final contract amount or the payment per year?
The payment per year.
It
Over the
would be
4
in our financials, but yes, we can get that for you.
Okay. If you would, thank you.
It should be on the dashboard, but if it's not there, we'll make sure that we get it for you. Yes, it's on the dashboard.
Oh, good. All right. Very
Page
good.
4 of the
I'll look at that.
dashboard. Yeah. Sorry, I thought it was somewhere. That's why we didn't repeat it.
Okay.
Any other questions
Got it.
about this item? If there are no further questions, do we have a motion to approve this item of new business?
So moved.
I
Second,
think that was a second by Mr. Beal.
yes.
And roll call vote, Mr. Beal,
Aye.
Ms. Caldarelli,
Aye.
Mr. Dickinson,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Bill says aye. The item is approved. Now we have an interesting topic, a new policy for participation in electronic meetings post July 1st. Counselor, would you like to discuss this new policy?
I'll take this one, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We received by email, I believe, today from the board secretary, a draft policy for electronic participation of the board members. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, the authorization for the entirely electronic meetings during the pandemic will expire in July. There's some possibility to continue it under the City Council's continuity of government resolution for a little bit longer, but by and large, the city is strongly recommending that we go back to the regular order after July 1st. And in any event, the governor's emergency declaration expires at the end of June, and we do not expect that to be renewed. In fact, the governor has indicated that he will not extend it. So what this means is that when the board resumes its in-person meetings next month, if you attend in person in the regular way, there's really no changes. There's no impact of this particular policy. But in order to get the greatest flexibility for board members to attend remotely if they need to, the Freedom of Information Act requires that each public body adopt a electronic participation policy. And there are some changes that become effective on July 1st, which is why we are proposing to you this particular policy go into effect on July 1st. Obviously, we don't really need it now because of the pandemic authorization for totally electronic meetings. But if we get into July and months going forward, and a board member has a reason why they would like to participate electronically, this policy will allow you to do so. Consistent with FOIA, as it's been over the last number of years, there are fairly significant limitations on how frequently and for what reasons a board member can attend the board meeting electronically. And there is a category for medical conditions, and that would be including both the board member's disability or other medical condition, or this is new, a family member's medical condition that requires the board member to provide care for that family member and therefore not able to attend the meeting in person. So there is that ability to attend electronically, which doesn't have a limitation on the number of times that you can exercise it. There's a procedural requirement that you would need to notify the board secretary and the chairman in advance to say that you will be participating electronically, but there are not limitations on the number of times you can exercise that. There's a separate authorization to attend electronically for what's identified as a personal matter. You are required to explain what that personal matter is, and there is a limitation of the greater of 2 meetings in a calendar year or 25% of the board meetings. So that could result 25% of 12 is 3. So in theory, you could exercise this for personal matters 3 times a year. I think probably the most typical or common personal matter is if you are on travel, for example, for your job and you just can't be present at the board meeting. So this is all set forth in the policy. The restrictions are all those which are required by FOIA, so there's really no way to make it any more permissive than what's been drafted and presented to you. And then finally, in section number 4 of the policy, it adds in and recognizes the possibility of a state of emergency, which is essentially what we've been working under for the last 15 months or so. And that remains a possibility, but obviously we hope that that doesn't happen again for a long time. So that's an explanation of the recommended policy. As I said, it tracks with all the requirements of FOIA, and I would recommend that the board adopt this policy effective as of July 1st of this year. Be happy to answer any questions.
Counselor, this is John. I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
If you have a board member phoning in, or zooming in remotely, is the meeting available? Is the meeting recorded and available in video form for the public?
Good question.
It can be. believe that it is not a requirement. Now, obviously, during the period when all of the board members are attending remotely, there is that requirement that it be recorded and posted. But I do not believe that FOIA requires, and I don't see it in our draft policy, that you would have to record that board meeting. And of course, a member of the public could attend in person, and they could hear the voice of the board member who is participating remotely live. So there's less of a need for that recorded meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
A question, perhaps John got to it, but I presume that after July, we would not routinely video our meetings. Is that correct?
That is no longer required. So there's no reason why you would have to record the meetings. Just as a point of information, I believe that Lorna keeps an audio recording to help her prepare the minutes. And under the state law for records preservation, that audio recording, once the minutes have been approved, does not need to be retained. So, so yeah, there would typically not be a permanent recording.
Well, as a matter of a policy, might it not be a good idea to record the meetings so they are available to the public if they're unable to get here or unwilling to come?
I think if it's not a logistical challenge, and particularly videotaping the meeting may be a problem, then it certainly is within the board's prerogative if you want that to happen. We historically have not posted recordings of the meetings, but if a majority of the board would like that, again, hopefully limiting it to audio, since we're not really set up typically for a video recording, we could make those arrangements.
I think that staff would have to look into it and give you a recommendation. There are, when you do video it, there is more bandwidth that's taken for the storage and things like that. So there's a couple of technical requirements that we would look into. I think, as you can see tonight, we're attempting to continue that so that we could be more public facing. And you see we're having significant challenges with that right now. So I think it's a work in progress, and we can certainly come back to the board later.
Okay.
Knowing that this is a preference of yours.
Any other discussion of this?
I have a question, John, and maybe for Jonathan. The personal reasons, it says, it doesn't define them, and it doesn't say if there be any grounds when a personal reason, although it has to be stated, would be disapproved by the chair, unless there's been too many absences or attempts to am I reading that sort of combination right?
You are correct. This section, in my mind, is a little bit obscure or difficult to exactly understand what constitutes a personal reason. But that's how it's stated in FOIA. So we're really just tracking the language that's in the statute. And I think you appropriately characterized it, that there isn't any criteria for determining what constitutes a sufficient personal reason. But I would think that the chairman would use discretion and want to accommodate members who have a reason. And other than exceeding the number of times in a calendar year, I don't think there'd be a particular reason to deny a member's request.
I was thinking the only thing that's forcing in this is, if you're honest, you should have a reason that's going to sound good.
It's true.
It's going to, that has to be on the record.
Yeah.
The other thing is that it's 25% or 3,
Mhm,
or 2 rather, whichever is greater.
mhm.
The 25% is of the total meetings during the year. We have monthly meetings of the full board. We also have occasional meetings of subcommittees or committees like budget and finance or governance. At those meetings, the committee meetings, board members, generally every board member is invited
Right.
if they wish to come. So does that go in the denominator of figuring out what 25% is?
So my interpretation, and you know, if the board wants to overrule me, that's fine, is that the committee meetings would be a separate category, and there would be a separate allotment of absences or electronic participation that would be in addition to electronic participation at the full board meeting. I think that's a reasonable flexibility. And also, as you pointed out, Mr. Johnson, if you are not a member of that committee, then this really doesn't restrict your participating electronically. So for example, if, and I can't remember the committee assignments, but if you were electronically attending a meeting of the governance committee and you're not a member, you're certainly entitled to be able to attend electronically, but it wouldn't be one where you'd have to give a reason.
Use one of
Right.
your personal exemptions or
Right.
personal excuses.
Right.
What is, okay, so we need to keep track of these separately by the full board and then by committee.
Committee.
And 2 would probably be the 2 personal reasons would probably be more than 25% of any of our board meetings. Our committee meetings. None of the
Right.
committees meet 8 times.
Right.
All right. And is chair, the language chair in this refer then to the chair of that committee in terms
Yes.
of?
Yeah, I would interpret it that way, that the committee would be.
Do you need anything to memorialize your interpretations? Or do we leave the language as it is and just have to remind ourselves of how we interpret that?
I guess my suggestion would be to leave it as is, because this is sort of a form that the FOIA Council has reviewed and approved. And I
Okay.
would prefer not to make changes to it.
Okay. All right. Can the minutes of the board meeting make note of our interpretation?
Certainly.
Okay. It might help us remember it if it ever comes up.
Right.
Okay.
Very good discussion, Mr. Johnson. Is there any further discussion on this proposed policy? Do I take this to mean everybody will be here in person for our July meeting?
Absolutely.
Looking forward to it.
I want to know what's on the menu before I make that decision.
We will accommodate your desires.
Will there be chocolate?
A point of personal privilege.
Yes, we will make sure that you all have individually wrapped meals, chocolate and.
Wonderful.
The reason I encourage everyone to come, of course, is the board, I think, looks better when we are in person. But also, I encourage everybody to see what's going on here. As I mentioned, the staging area looks like it's almost completely set up, and the area where the shafts will go down is cleared, ready to go. We were working remotely, and I think you'd all enjoy seeing it. And it's only going to get busier in the months of July and August. So a good time to be on site. So looking forward to that. We have a motion.
Can I, well, you brought it up, but let's do the motion first, and I'll come back to it. Go ahead.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the policy?
So moved.
That was Bruce. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, Mr. Beal,
Aye.
Ms. Caldarelli,
Aye.
Mr. Dickinson,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Hill says aye, so moved. Now, Mr. Johnson, you
I very much would like to look around the grounds. I wonder if I came at 4:30 or 5 or something like that. If any other, if Karen, could you have somebody to show me around, and if any other board members might like to do that as well, it might make it easy to introduce us to all the activities there on the grounds.
Bruce, I think that's a great idea, and I would like to join you.
I agree.
Me too. I don't think you'll need 45 minutes, but a couple minutes anyway.
Well, why don't we say 5 o'clock, and then it'll give us time to get back and grab our bite to eat.
Well, the staff would offer that perhaps 4:30 is good. We can show you some of the new facilities, the new lab, and walk over there, make sure we're safe. And then that'll allow you time to get cleaned up before the board meeting.
Great.
We'll make sure that you have appropriate PPE, make sure you wear closed-toe shoes.
So pandemic era sandals are out. Is that the message, Madam C?
You are not permitted to wear, what was it you told me you were wearing? Flip-flops?
I'm more worried about those things that John and Jim have around their neck. Do I have to wear one of those?
They're coming back in style. Okay, let's move right along on the agenda. We have the final item is monthly outcomes update. Madam CEO.
Mr. Chair, you have had my report and the dashboard and the financial report. I just want to go over a couple more things that are not in the board report. As you know, we've been working with DEQ for the last few years to negotiate a combined VPDS permit. Previous to this, when we took over the city's CSO outfalls, they had a separate permit and that was transferred over to us, and then we had our plant permit. As part of the reissuance of our plant permit, we joined those together and are in the process of terminating that CSO permit. That joined permit went to public notice. No comments were received from the public, and we should have a signed, updated, singular permit that incorporates both our existing mission of treating wastewater and our new mission of intercepting and collecting and building a tunnel for the combined sewer. By the end of the month or the beginning of July, DEQ, it has to go through their chain to get it all signed. So we should see that shortly. So that is good. Also, at the same time we were talking about the permit, DEQ enforcement talked to us about issuing a consent order back when we had the overflows that were caused by that wet weather. That also is in the process of being public noticed. If you remember, we talked about that right before the pandemic hit. So that has been negotiated as part of the work with the negotiation of the actual VPDS permit. Again, that draft is at public notice now. If you recall the conversations, basically it's an agreement to implement the AlexRenew project in the timeframes that are listed in this VPDS permit that will be reissued here shortly. It also includes, as all of them do, a small supplemental environmental program, which is really clearing some invasive species in and around the NMF and the plant. And we expect this to be issued by summer's end. So it's going through that APA public notice process. And then again, once we clear that hurdle, which should be the end of the month or the middle of July, it'll go through that chain of command to get signed. So we are clearing a number of hurdles and getting us in a good position to move forward, protective of the plant and compliance as we get well underway with constructing the tunnel, which you all get to preview next month. So those are 2 updates. And then lastly, please let us know. We heard you with the comments to the dashboard last month. Please let me know if that meets the intent of your comments, or if there's anything additional you would like us to try to do to provide that data more clearly to you. And then additionally, there's an attachment to the CEO report. It's a 2-page document that talks about building to improve the health of Alexandria's waterways. That was a document that we provided to Senator Eben at the request of the legislative director for the city, Sarah Taylor, as the state starts to get some of that ARPA money into its hands. He is going to assist AlexRenew and the city in seeing if we can't meet some of that, get some of those funds. And Mr. Chair, that is all the updates I have off the top of my head.
Thank you. Any questions from the board regarding the update?
This sort of takes us back a bit to I'm trying to find it here. Hold on a second. I believe it was in the presentation of the rate increases last month when we had that presentation for the first time. We introduced a lot of numbers on the costs of one water and the various different utility fees that people pay, and I had more time to look at it on this version here this month, and it's really good. I just wonder if there's any sort of discussion between city and or American Water, Virginia American Water, or any forum in which this sort of information can be raised. I know our restrictions in terms of how we charge and can't sort of discriminate based on income levels or such. But the total number as an annual amount is going to get quite high over the next several years. And the framework put together there is a good one for trying to evaluate its impact on our citizenry, our residents.
It's a good question. I don't know that there's an exact forum to relay this information. It is shared with the legislative director as part of the ask when we make these. I think a lot of it too, we share it with the housing folks. You can see where the largest impacts are around that. So I think there's a belief that if we can help fund and make affordable or housing affordable in the community, that really helps people to have the income needed to pay the 1% or other fees that they have within their lives. So it's a sticky issue. I think that the city has really put an effort forward around affordable housing, and that's their focus right now. I can't speak to what Virginia American Water is doing and whether they're having the same conversation going forward. As you know, our goal is to do the best we can in terms of financial stability and working very hard to get debt that is at the best rate possible to keep our financials strong. I think you see a very strong showing that gets us some of the highest ratings, which also helps keep our costs down. We work very hard to keep our O&M costs. But to your point, once AlexRenew is done, those O&M costs are going to start to add up. And where we've been very fortunate, and staff has done an extraordinary job at keeping our O&M budget on an annual year-over-year basis relatively stable, those costs are going to have to go up. We're going to have more energy costs and pumping costs and more equipment to maintain. So the future holds a lot of additional challenges for us in how we operate and maintain it. We're taking on a whole new mission, and we're going to have to fund it and pay for it. I think that we have the opportunity to continue to share this information through the council board work groups and through the SAG, and we'll just continue to share the information to the best of our ability and continue to work to work with the legislative director and the city staff and the elected officials to seek out other grant fundings to keep our rates low as well.
Well, my worry is affordable housing focuses mostly on the costs of rent, since most of those folks are renters, but also sometimes the cost of the housing itself. But their operating costs, if you will, include this one water bill, which is now looked like it was, if I remember right, I couldn't quite find it while we were talking here now, but over $1,000 a year. And if somebody's making $20,000 a year and just paying $1,000 a year for water, on top of that, they have electricity and or gas and that sort of utilities. It's substantial. It's a substantial problem to be faced. And our costs are going up because of AlexRenew, also because of the operating costs Karen mentioned. American Water is trying to raise their rates, not so successfully sometimes. The city's stormwater utility fee is on track for a huge increase over the next 10 years. And they haven't said much about their sanitary sewer fee, but I can't imagine that'll stay flat too. So, you know, and the model we drew only went out to 2026, and the city is talking about increases to the stormwater fee through 2030. Sizable increases out till then. And it's kind of like no one of the players wants to be responsible. We have a statutory reason for not being responsible, but it's not something that the people who are going to have to be paying the bills have much sympathy for, as to all the reasons why each of the individual government actors or a private sector actor sort of think, well, it's not really something we can deal with. I'm not trying to shame anybody here or whatever. I'm just seeing a big public policy problem coming at us over the next 10 years, for which right now there's no organizational or legal structure to solve the problem.
Understood. I think that's why we put this in here. We show the levels of income, and we show what we can and can't do, and what that percent is based on basic living costs, based on the different percentiles, and based on the poverty rates. And then, you know, we do try to look across the state and in the areas around what this looks like. So I would say we are doing the best we can within the limits of what we have. Being an independent authority, we sometimes don't have the ear of the elected officials. And I think the elected officials are looking more at these, what's a living wage and how can we lift all people up around housing. At some point, yes, there will be a tipping point when stormwater, wastewater, and drinking water get to the point where it's more impactful, and more people can vote around water. I know at the national level it continues to be, it's just a challenge. People don't see our infrastructure. A lot of it's underground, and so it tends to be forgotten in terms of getting the help that's needed, whether from an affordability issue or an infrastructure bill issue. Roads and bridges get that money first. So I agree with you. I don't know how to raise it up for us, but we will continue to market it and share this information broadly. I know it's information that as we work with Senator Eben, as we work with the CSO communities, is also shared. They look at those affordability numbers and the census tract data around poverty. We just don't fare as well as maybe say Richmond when we look at those numbers. So there's challenges inherent in all of it going together. But your point is taken, and understand that we don't slough it off. We do the best we can with the tools that we have.
Adding on to Mr. Johnson, I think the fact that our budget presentations now include a consideration of the total one water cost, I think is a big step forward. And I think that as the city begins to formulate this stormwater strategy, stormwater working group, I think the total picture of ultimate cost for stormwater mitigation becomes clear. I think this whole concept of total cost of one water is going to influence policy eventually, not soon, but over the years.
And I would ask the board for assistance. We do this. We're the ones that have put this slide together around, the graphic that I think you're referencing, Mr. Johnson, with the circle and all the different percents of what people pay and the different poverty rates. The elected officials work for you, your city council works for you. When they go through the budget process, perhaps a request from you to look at this same graphic from a one water perspective, or to include it when the city does their budget as well, might help to start raising the issue up as they look to move their stormwater fees and sanitary sewer fees at a higher and higher level. The more that we can work together, the more that we can share that same data, I think would be helpful. So, from a staff perspective, perhaps that's something the board would consider to help us move forward. It's not an ask we can make as staff, but you as members of the public could during that budget presentation that the city provides.
Well, let me talk to think about it. I think maybe some sort of letter from the board or from a board member, the chair, to council, putting it on record in a more formal way, saying we're looking at these numbers as we look ahead at our rates going up, and we look at other rates going up, and we look at the unequal impacts that has on the different people we serve. That it's a problem. We're looking for a solution, but we need to start figuring out what those solution possibilities might be.
Very, very good point, Mr. Johnson. I'm on the Stormwater Advisory, ad hoc advisory group. And when we start working on cost-related issues, which I think is still probably a couple months away, I do intend to bring in the one water slide, because I think any discussion of any water infrastructure has to be done in the context of all the different fees that residents pay, not just their stormwater fee, not just the wastewater fee, but all the water fees together. So you bring up a good point. There is no one government entity that is responsible for the total price tag. That's a very, very good point. I think our job is to build leadership in this space. Very good. Any other discussion on the outcomes? If no further discussion, do I have a motion to adjourn our last video meeting?
Also move.
Is there a
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Beal. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, and we will see everybody here. Come on. Hopefully at 4:30. If you got a tour. So
Yes, July 20th.
July 20th. Okay, we'll see everybody in July. In the meantime, have a great summer and a wonderful 4th of July. And we'll see our next meeting here in this room.
All right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Online meeting. It's working. It's working. Thanks, everybody. And have a great summer.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.